Now, let's debunk this notion concerning the Sabbath. Let's look at Genesis chapter 2 and verses 2 through 3. Verses 2 through 3. This is the favorite proof text used by Seventh-day Adventists to prove that the Lord honored the Sabbath day. So because he honored the Sabbath day, we should all likewise honor the Sabbath day as well. Genesis chapter 2, verse 2. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. Look at this. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. So notice that because God did this ever since the beginning of creation, why aren't we all doing it? So that's how Seventh-day Adventists will argue. So they will use Genesis chapter 2. Let me know if I'm out of bounds. Genesis chapter 2, verses 2 through 3, in which that ever since creation basically blessed the Sabbath. So because creation blessed the Sabbath, should we not all observe the Sabbath day as well? There's also a Hebrew verb that's mentioned in this passage as well. Shabbath. So they would use some Hebrew words to kind of point it out, just like a Jehovah's Witness. They will claim that the sabbatical commandment, the Sabbath, did not start with Moses. Okay, remember this. Sometimes, if you know dispensationalism and you've been in our previous lessons, you kind of know what I'm going to say. If you remember our teachings on dispensationalism at the beginning of intermediate discipleship, you might remember that we argue that we don't observe the Sabbath because it's a part of Moses' law. And Moses' law was done away with at the cross, correct?
It is wrong to say that the Sabbath was part of Moses' law. The true statement is that the Sabbath was part of God's laws, that is, the Ten Commandments. Moses never gave the Ten Commandments. God gave them. The second false statement is that the Sabbath was done away with at the cross. What is the truth? The truth is that Jesus' death on the cross did not make void the Ten Commandments. We are still required not to kill, not to worship other gods, and to do all the commandments.
But what they're going to argue is that it's not started with Moses' law, it started at the beginning of creation. That's how they're going to argue to get around it. Now, keep your hand at Genesis 2. We're going to look at Exodus 16, please. Exodus chapter 16. This is their other proof text to prove and to use that people were observing the Sabbath before Moses' law. Look at Genesis chapter 16 and verse 23. Now, Seventh-day Adventists, keep in mind this, they're more scripturally minded than Jehovah's Witnesses, or JWs, as I call them. So keep that in mind. Seventh-day Adventists, they're more scripturally minded. And what I mean by that is sound. They sound more scriptural than Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses, they're just so used to lying because they talk to so many doors. So they're used to lying and go away around. So they can be the most annoying to talk to. But Seventh-day Adventists, the way that they discuss with you Scripture is that they're more scripturally sound. So because of this, you have to be aware of these verses I'm going to pull up to you. We're going to look at Genesis chapter 16 and verse 23. And he said unto them, This is that which the Lord hath said, Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which ye will bake today, and seize that ye will seize, and that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until the morning. Look at 28 through 29. And the Lord said unto Moses, How long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for that the Lord hath given you the Sabbath. Okay, this is important because Exodus 16 seems to be the really good proof text for Seventh-day Adventists. Because you got to realize this, the Ten Commandments did not start until Exodus 20. Exodus 20 is when they started the 10 Commandments. So notice right here, before the 10 Commandments, before Moses' law, that God already gave a commandment on the Sabbath. See, so this will be a good proof text for Seventh-day Adventists again. Not only that, if you show them Exodus 20, go to Exodus 20. If you show them Exodus 20, that's not going to help your case. You might say, why? Because they're going to point out the wording here. Look at Exodus chapter 20, verse 8. Notice that the passage did not say, keep the Sabbath at Exodus 20, verse 8. It says in Exodus 20, verse 8, remember the Sabbath, right? As if the Lord gave a commandment before. See that? It's not the first time the Lord gave a commandment on observing the Sabbath. It was as if the Lord already gave the commandment on the Sabbath a long time ago, so God's telling them to remember. So to give the argument that the Sabbath is under Moses' law and Jesus' cross done away, Moses' law and Sabbath is not going to work. Because Seventh-day Adventists are going to point out, no, the Sabbath was observed before Moses' law. Before Exodus 20, when God gave the 10 Commandments. And even if you show them Exodus 20, they're going to point out the wording remember, as if it was already given, the commandment long before. So that's going to be a problem. Let's also look at Mark chapter 2. Now, I believe this is their number one strongest passage. This is what I believe is their number one strongest passage, is Mark chapter 2. Oh man, Pastor, you're scaring me already. You know, these verses look strong enough. That's why you got to study the Scriptures. If you don't study the Scriptures, friend, Satan's people will. And remember this, Satan is wiser than Daniel, and Satan quoted Scripture to Jesus. You don't think that the devil's people don't know as much Scripture as you do. That's why it's so important that you study, that you read the Bible, that you attend a Bible-believing church and grow in much knowledge as you can. If you don't, then the devil's people are going to stomp on you. All right, so I think, in my opinion, Mark chapter 2, verse 27 is their strongest passage. Much knowledge as you can. If you don't, then the devil's people are going to stomp on you. All right, so I think, in my opinion, Mark chapter 2, verse 27 is their strongest passage. Notice right here that Jesus Christ, he mentioned, and he said unto them, the Sabbath was, look at this, made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Uh-oh. So it seems like when God created a seventh day, ever since the beginning, he deliberately created that seventh day for man to observe.